Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have Elizabeth. She is a stress management and a historical trauma specialist. Welcome, Elizabeth. So happy to have you with us this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. It's a delight to be here.
Yes. So I have to know, kind of tell us a little bit about, your journey and your story of healing over the last 40 years
Mm.
and why you call yourself a historical trauma specialist, because that's interesting.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Um, so I have a long history of chronic pain, um, which was really I started not knowing at the time. Um, I started really experiencing chronic pain as a child because I lived in a dysfunctional family, which was very unpredictable, and there was a lot of pressure, right? Um, and then I had an accident when I was 14, and I had another huge trauma when I was 15. I had an accident and actually broke a bone in my spine and my low spine. But I got up from the accident and walked away, so we never died. It never got like x-rayed or diagnosed or anything. I just I just kept going. So it gives you an idea of the load of chronic pain that I already had going into that accident.
Right.
Right. So, and just kind of like the way that the mantra in my life as I was growing up, the culture was no pain, no gain. And
Yeah.
if you fall down, get up. Right. So that energy was kind of what was driving the bus, and how I was handling that. I was getting by on my wits. Um, just kind of in reactivity to all of it, doing the best I could to thread my way. Um, by the time so that was 14, I had that accident. By the time I was 28, uh, I needed surgery on that. So the situation became unstable because the bone broke front to back, and the front part of it slipped forward and pulled the leg nerves with it, and so created quite an imbalance in the spine. And it was right at the fifth lumbar, which is it's the weakest point in the spine, and it has the greatest load. So it was like the one bone that's kind of tricky. Anyway, I had a lot of pain, physical pain at that point, and um, and I ended up having four surgeries to get the thing sorted out. And going into that, just when we were discussing with the doctors, it's time the doctors were saying time for surgery. They started me on opiates and benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepine is an anti-anxiety medicine because my reaction to the pain was so great, which was a lot of pain, so that's kind of normal, but that's just what they did. And I ended up just more surgery, more pain, more medicine, and the doctors after the shortly after the second surgery, which was those two surgeries were almost a year apart, the doctors said, "Oh, you have this thing called chronic pain, and you can't heal from it."
Hmm.
And that was devastating to me at the time.
Yeah.
But I had the benefit of having had been trained as a science researcher. And so I knew something about the fact that Western medicine was operating in a scientific framework.
Right.
I knew the limitations of the scientific framework.
Right.
And I knew, thank God for my education, I
Right.
knew that, pardon me, when they made that statement that they had made an error because
Right.
they were saying you can't. And science is not about facts, it's about probabilities.
Right.
So they didn't say maybe. They didn't
Right.
say the odds are. They just said not possible. And I was just like, yeah, I see that. And and I went ahead and also realized not only did they make a mistake, but they were revealing to me the limitation of the model they were working in more
Right.
than they were telling me about the body's ability to heal.
Right.
And so that was important. And the other thing I understood because of my training was that we live in the all that is, but science operates in only a part of the all that is that it can observe, measure, and describe.
Right.
So it can't comment outside of that framework, which doctors can't comment outside of that framework.
Right.
And so I knew that their healing model not only was limited, but they were limited in this other way. Like I knew we've got some real limitation here. So I knew I was going to have to expand my perspective on healing. And anyway, long journey. I did a lot of, in the meantime, I did, hatha yoga and massage and I had some Reiki and I acupuncture and meditation was huge. So there were lots of things that I used to kind of keep me going along with the medication, which ended up really being a disaster because it just exacerbated the problem.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so finally, I found a doctor who truly understood the nature of chronic pain and was Eastern and Western trained.
Oh, okay.
And he was not just he had like addiction specialist, brain physiologist, researcher, like all addiction specialist, all these things, and a Qigong healer.
Oh,
And by the time he was 6 years old, he started in Kung Fu. So he
yeah.
had this he had this understanding of energy that Western doctors just don't get exposed to, right?
Yeah.
And it was so interesting, Lauren, because I sat across from him. He didn't want to see any of my x-rays or look at my records. He said, I'm not interested in any of that. I just want to see who you are. And I was like, who are you and where have you been all my life? No
Right?
one ever asked me that. No
Yeah.
doctor ever did that.
Yeah.
And it was really, I really felt seen and heard on a level I had never felt before. And of course my defenses just,
Right. Yeah.
just so anyway, I walked into a pain management program with this doctor handling that program, and he detoxed me off that medication. The last 15 years of that 31 years of on opiates and benzos, the last 15 years was fentanyl and Ativan.
Oh my goodness.
So that, was amazing to like survive that. I just, it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
He knew how to detox me off of that. I walked into that program with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain, no physical pain. I still had the stress habit
Right.
that
Right.
had driven the pain in the first place. So I had to work on that, but the physical pain was gone, which was astonishing. And Dr. Prescott never promised that. He just said, I think I can help you reset your stress response. And I was like, I was having panic attacks because of the benzos anyway. And I was
Right.
like, I'm in. I'm like,
Right.
I'm coming.
Try it.
so, so anyway, here was the thing. I healed in 52 days. And I wasn't unusual. He had a 94% success rate. And every person in his program, I was there with 20 of them. Every person in the program, that 94%, we were all what the doctors called hickory nut cases, cases other doctors couldn't crack because they
Okay.
didn't have the perspective, they didn't have the tools. I'm not dissing doctors. I'm saying that their model is limited and that can cause a problem. And Dr. Prescott didn't have those limitations. So when I got out of treatment and really was able to get my sea legs and my own recovery, I was like, I'm going to teach these methods. I'm going to, because I have a lifetime of experience of chronic pain. I could spot it like in a heartbeat. And I know
Yeah.
all the little games that we play to stay in it. So I'm
Right.
really good at that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I used all those tools. I used Dr. Prescott's tools and a few more, that really helped clear it. And I was like, let's bring this into the mainstream,
Yeah.
and teach people that they can heal from chronic pain. It's not a life sentence.
Right.
So the historical trauma piece of that was that in Dr. Prescott's program, he had a wellness practitioner named John Newton, who's from healthbeyondbelief.com. You can find him. He does ancestral clearing, and I experienced that energy healing modality in Dr. Prescott's program. And I was so impressed with it. I was like, wow, I was so impressed with that, that I went and became a practitioner as soon as possible. So I've been an ancestral clearing practitioner since 2014. And the that process, of ancestor clearing looks at the uh, at, I'm trying to say this, in a helpful way. We acknowledge that we carry imprints from the past.
Right.
Roots oftentimes are in the lineage, and as a result of that, and also with my own kind of history and the history of my own family, I became very interested in trauma
Hmm.
and historical trauma and collective trauma and the whole kind of what's happening here, in the field, and is there anything we can do about it so that we can break the cycle?
Right.
So that's what I do. That's a long answer to a very short
I,
question.
I know. I love that. And now that you say in historical trauma, I guess I'm kind of comparing it to what I do in my own business. And I guess I do a lot of ancestral clearing. I've done a lot of myself and I've gotten it done. And it seems like every single time I had a podcast guest last week, and or was it last week? No, it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she does Akashic Records. Well, I kind of debunked. I wanted to talk to her about it because, she's a specialist. And I said to her, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that you can't access your records. Like you have to, I know I can, but I am also a shamanic practitioner. So like it's just easier for me. Right. So I had said, I was like, so who is telling somebody they can't access their records? They're your records. Why can't you access them? She was like, Lauren, I have to be completely honest. She's like, I only ever usually work with people 1 or 2 times because I show them how to do it for themselves. And I was like, oh, okay. So you're not part of that collective. But when you're saying about the trauma, the collective trauma, ancestral trauma, I've noticed there's also a huge wave of healing, like the rose line too, of like your ancestors, like, your mom's side. And I noticed that also it's a huge thing right now too, with everything else that is going on, that a lot of us women are healing that. I mean, sure, there's other things too, but um there's been a huge wave of me doing like sessions and stuff, and it's always like a mother wound, or lately I should say, even for myself too, like problems with my mom, or things that I've seen from my grandmother, or why was I close with my grandmother but not my mom? Like I needed to figure out what was her position, what's her role here. And then I realized, oh my gosh, my mom's role is not to be my mother, not to nurture me. It's to show me how I can do it for myself. So like things like that, I realized, oh my God, and this ancestral healing session that I'm having with somebody else actually teaching me about what it can help for me too.
Mhm.
I love that you do all of that, because I feel like it's a lot of us in this line of work are carrying things that aren't ours. It's from ancestors. I'm thinking to myself, gosh, what might my ancestors do? Like, what are they doing? Like why do I have to feel it? Because it's so heavy, and it's like once you break that cycle, it doesn't repeat. Like you just said. So I
Mm,
love that you're in that line of work.
thank you. I would say just on the I don't call what I do Akashic record reading,
Right,
but all of this work that we're referencing, we're accessing that information through the present moment, through the quantum field. And so that information is in the present moment. Anybody can access it. It's just a matter of like listening. And I would also say that yes, we can do this work for ourselves, and sometimes we can't see our
right,
own blind spots, and that's why it's useful to work with a practitioner, because I do a lot of my own ancestor clearing work, and I work with other ancestor clearing practitioners, and we trade and stuff.
yeah,
Um, because we'll see an aspect something that's happening in the present moment about the current dynamic that I'm just like freaking blind to. And
right,
so they're coming in and helping with the facilitating that. But the clearing in ancestral clearing is done by source.
right.
We're not doing anything except kind of, guiding a process and listening to kind of what's the information and kind of, looking at questioning looking at body wisdom to show us and source once we got the client kind of centered in what they're really clearing, their willingness to want help, source comes in and just whoop, it's
Right. Well,
for what they're willing to release.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Some stuff, I don't want, like I have, just by the way, while we're on that subject, I have a hot button on righteous indignation. And I've worked on that button, uh, and I still have it. It's not as, it's, it's, well, I wouldn't say it's lukewarm these days, but but it's not as fiery as it used to be. At this point, it's like, I know it's there, and it's got fierce energy behind it, but it's not explosive. It's just freaking persistent. Kind of like
yeah,
water on a rock.
yeah,
It's just going to keep hitting, right? So that ancestor clearing's done that for me. Well, you look at my lineage, and you'll see that my family, centuries ago, was persecuted
yeah,
on both sides. Right? We
yeah.
see
So,
persecution and we all have this in common one way or another, you
yeah.
know. So we hold the oppressor and the oppressed in the system.
Hey there, I just wanted to take a quick moment to share with all of you spiritual rebels and fempreneurs. If you've been craving a space where you can build wealth, heal trauma, and rise alongside like-minded women, I got something for you to hear about. I'm excited to invite you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. This is a low-cost, high-impact group membership designed exclusively for spiritual fempreneurs who know they need accountability and support to create sustainable wealth, but aren't ready to dive into a one-on-one mentorship. In this membership, you'll get monthly calls, rituals, healing sessions, and workshops to break through your self-doubt and build confidence so that you can consistently sell your offers and make money. This is also a collaborative private Facebook community where you make lifelong connections with other women who are just as serious as hitting their goals. And my personal guidance as your intuitive human design business guide and trauma healer, ensuring you stay aligned and on track with your business goals. Plus, you'll get free access to all my paid workshops and masterclasses, along with exclusive VIP pricing for my one-on-one Voxer membership. This membership is all about helping you heal the sabotaging behaviors blocking your abundance and using your human design to create a business that feels amazing to run. Imagine waking up excited to serve your clients and knowing that you have the exact support you need to hit every single one of your business goals every single month. So if you're ready to rise and build wealth with a sisterhood of spiritual misfits, make sure you click the registration link in the description box. Right now, the investment is just $88 a month, but the price will increase to $197 a month. Join today to unlock exclusive rates and get access to next month's kickoff call. Let's get back to today's episode, but remember, your next level is just one decision away. Join the sisterhood and let's rise together.
Right.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, we do the clearing and we clear for the stuff that's available to us and that doesn't serve us anymore. And that button on me, it's changed its energy, but it still has a job to do. And I'm not really interested in being equanimous about my righteous indignation. I don't actually want to lose that. I want to keep that. Call it sacred rage. I want to keep my finger on that temperature, and I don't want that. I don't want to neutralize that.
Right.
I don't even think that's possible. I don't think it's realistic, given the history of the human race. I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's another thing we do in this space is we try and be as truthful as possible. We look at the truth and we stare it down and we call it what it is to the best of our ability.
Yeah. I was going to say, I like that you said that because I think a lot of people especially listening, they're all into this stuff. And one of my clients had said, I forget what I was doing. And she was like, yeah, but I like that about myself. And I was like, that's fine. I think we are in the Chamber of Contracts or something like that. And she was looking at a contract and she was telling me what it said. And then I just asked the question, do you want to change it? And she said, I don't. And I was like, okay, I don't think people realize that you're allowed to say, I'm not ready for that. You're allowed to say, I want that still. So if it's like what you say, I don't want to lose that, then you don't lose that. It's like I think that because of society, we often forget that we actually are able to pick what we choose, free will, pretty much. You're allowed to, even though you came here, you don't know what contracts you picked, you don't know why the heck you are going through what you go through. Whatever, you don't remember it or whatever, but now you do remember some of it. You also are allowed to pick. I don't want to do that this lifetime. I want to put that on the shelf. I don't, it was kind of like my anger. I had so much anger as a kid. I had so much, pent up, suppression and of whatever. And I realized I actually don't want to lose my anger. Do I want to lose how it controlled me? Yes. Did I want to, and that kind of the same thing for you. Like my anger is what kept me safe for a very long time, or people wouldn't mess with me or whatever it was. But now it's more of like, how can I just learn from my anger, be friends with my anger, and just not try to run away from my anger kind of thing, and learn that it's just a normal human emotion that I need to learn from,
Yeah.
It's like just like stuff like that I was like, people are like, I don't want my ego. I think I was there too. Like when I was first healing, I don't like my ego. I don't want it. I just don't want it. Well, that pushed me back so much because you can't get rid of it.
Our ego's job is to keep us safe.
Right.
And it has consequences. Its job being that it has consequences in the rest of the life in our that work that we do to be present and to meditate and to watch it instead of get dragged by it is the work, right? But I'd like to just jump and add to something that you said about not wanting to release yet. And I work in stress management and I'm a trauma-informed yoga instructor, so that's part of what I do, that work. I work as a betrayal trauma coach, so I'm I'm working in that space, and I've done my own work around my own stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I discovered early in my recovery and early when I first started this really kind of uncovering um, the old stuff that I had suppressed for so long. I had a class with a teacher, and he called them love missions. They were assignments. He just called it something different.
Yeah.
And one of his assignment, and they were fine, but one of his assignments was, because this was addiction recovery,
Right.
one of the assignments was, uh, you know, uncover shame wherever it lives, because shame is the food of addiction. And I'm like, I hear that, and and
Yes.
I and when it applied at that point in my recovery, where I was, it's like, give me another assignment. I'm not ready for that. I am not ready to look at that.
Yeah.
However, I put a pin in it and said, "Oh, kind of like metaphorically put a pin in it." I,
Yeah.
I remembered it, and then and then about 9 months later, I was in the middle of a meditation one morning, and there it was. That shame piece came right up in my meditation, and at that point, I had grown. I just love this so much. I had grown enough in resilience of my nervous system and awareness and self-compassion to be able to look at that and not freak out, right?
Right.
But just look at it and let it move through, right?
Yeah.
But I had really been given a gift of grace and wisdom in that moment when he gave that assignment 9 months earlier, to go, my nervousness is like, girl, you are so not ready for this. And I honored that, right? I honored that, because I was like already doing plenty of work, and I was, no, it's just too much. So the choice, understand we have agency. When we are traumatized, and all of us have been traumatized,
Yeah.
we didn't have a choice.
Right.
So we're traumatized in unsafe relationships. So we heal in safe relationship,
Right.
where we regain our agency and reclaim our choice. So I just want to really underline that point that you made around choice, so that people really understand it in this other context as well as the one that you brought in, because it's just, we're all doing so much right now
Yeah.
around this.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, that's a great way, like full circle, to put of basically what I did. I was doing so much, and I was just like, I'm not ready because I just feel like I wouldn't be able to look at my anger or look at things with compassion for myself, because right, it starts with ourselves first, and then be able to look at shame. The shame was probably, I feel like shame was probably the other big one that I shamed myself a lot. I feel like all of us can,
Yeah, especially women.
yeah, like
I mean, I'm sure the guys do too, but I'm just very
yeah,
familiar with it in the women, because we have patterns. Like, I don't know one woman that I've ever met that hasn't had to face the body shaming demon. Like, I just don't know any. We all have had that, right? And
small, big, tiny, it doesn't matter.
it
I've
doesn't
even,
matter what, it's there, right?
yeah, I've met a couple, like, pretty skinny women, and they still body shame. And I'm like,
Yeah,
so it's not just
yeah,
women that are heavier set, have
that's
extra weight
right.
on them, their meat suit's a little bit fluffier than the other, you know? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's some men I know, especially my husband, getting the human design piece. I realized that men probably don't talk about it as much as women, but I do know that they probably suppress a lot of the shame,
Mm.
especially
Mhm.
because my husband, he's in recovery, like he's 5 years clean right now. So, and his drug of choice was fentanyl too. So, uh, he didn't realize, like, when I was like doing human design stuff on his, like, just talking to him about it, I said, you know that your genetic trauma basically encoded into your DNA, it's what you come into this world with, is shame. is like the genetic trauma of shame. And he was like, oh my God. I said, so yours started way before your addiction started. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, addiction is a coping mechanism
right,
to handle the stuff that I don't know how to handle this.
right,
And in our societies, that everything in our society is set up for us to just grab, the
yeah,
thing that's closest to us to feed that,
right.
to cope with that. And we just do it in really unhealthy ways. But absolutely, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that that's but I'm not surprised to hear it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many people that I was in high school with that, are in recovery or they talked about this or talked about that. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how, you know, I feel like all of us have an addictive personality. It depends on if it's socially acceptable. Like, do you have a shopping addiction? If it's a porn addiction, if it's a sex addiction, it's like, gambling addiction, it's like that's okay. But it's like when you are doing drugs or whatever, it just deteriorates your body a little bit faster. And, you have basically, you're messing with death every day, so it's just interesting how all of this stuff wasn't talked about when I was, in school and now
All right.
just, it's
We
now
look at we
so
look at addiction as any behavior you continue to do that has negative consequences on your life.
right.
And
Too.
anything where you're looking away from what's here, anything and so all of those behaviors are, we're trying to look away from whatever discomfort, pain,
Right.
or argument. I was said I had an argument with the present moment. I just didn't like the way it showed up. And so I had, drug addiction, but um, I had very young as a teenager, I quit drinking when I was 17. So I drank for 3 years and I just like fell in but I knew from my family, I
Yeah.
knew this is not going to take me to a safe place.
Right.
I didn't see the drug thing coming. And then I kind of got stuck up in it until I finally found my way through, which I think grace chased me the whole way.
Yeah.
Um, but the stress habit was the thing that it doesn't create dopamine. It doesn't create the same kind of pleasure reward thing in the brain, but it's still addictive, and we still it does create biochemistry that we chase,
Yes.
and we can get lost. I was, and many people are. We get lost in that. Not we don't even know we're in it. Um,
Right.
and then unwinding that, we realize it because that's very caustic to the system,
Right.
right? That stress was we're not made for that. We're when that creates all kinds of biochemistry that's beyond drugs and alcohol. Just the stress habit itself creates a very toxic environment for the body,
Right.
right? So, uh, if you look around in society nowadays and you look at the burnout rate, I heard like last year, um, I was worked with a woman who was putting a program together for graduate students that were getting their masters in mental health, the mental health field, and she wanted somebody to come in and she's putting a program together to support them, to give them tools, because the burnout rate in that profession is people don't last 2 years in that because they burn out.
Yeah.
Well, that's indicative of stress habit.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had three different hours I brought in three different I brought in trauma informed yoga, a class in that. I brought in ancestral clearing, an hour of that, and then I brought in a thing around really just focusing on burnout and good self-care practices, right?
Yeah.
But this stress habit is we're all the burnout that we're seeing, that's a stress habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was diagnosed with clinical burnout twice, and I realized I can't keep doing this. I can't keep, I was a new mom going through postpartum, all this stuff. And then it's like,
A
oh,
lot.
you're clinically burnt out. Well, it's like, well, I have to work, my normal job. I have to work overnights. I have to do this. I have to pay, it's like I wasn't sleeping and it was just constant. And I realized one day when I was scrolling on social media and I seen this, I just was like, universe, please give me something that I can understand why this keeps happening, And so then I came across human design, and that's why I'm so passionate about, and that's why the goal that I share human design with is because if you operate in your own energy, you're not going to burn out. And I just feel like that in itself can help so many people.
That's a useful tool.
Yeah, like and that's why I always talk about it on like these talks that I do online, or, like my husband just signed me up for a TED talk, which I'm like, what are you doing?
That's awesome. That's great.
My talk, what are you doing? But I do believe that just what I have to say to get it to the masses, or like to teach people how to do it themselves, is huge when it comes to burnout, because you literally will burn out literally off this dimension sometimes. Like, it's just like, it's just, it sucks. And for me, having to have to go through it twice, I'm just like, I need to figure out why this keeps happening. It was because I was operating completely out of alignment of what I am now. And now when I do, I usually get sick. It's probably why I have getting over a sinus infection, or my body's like, no, you're going to be bedridden last week, because it's like, you're not doing that again, because I still have lessons I have to learn from it, but my body usually will shut down first before, and not keep, my body's like, you're not doing this to us again, so it's like, I still to this day, I mean, realize looking back, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. That's probably completely out of alignment, or it just kind of like helps protect me now. So yeah, burnout is real. And I don't feel like, and a lot of people that are burnt out probably don't even know that they're burnt out too, because they have just no awareness of
They
it.
may not have the awareness that,
Right.
but the bodies, that doesn't feel
I'm telling
good.
you and you're not listening.
The adrenals are that's that creates physiology that's quite is very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very, very caustic, right? So we'll just I just want to back up for a minute and define what chronic pain is. Chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, doesn't matter. It all sends the same signal to the brain, it hurts.
Yeah. Oh,
So a broken bone and a broken heart, broken bone doesn't heal, and a broken heart, same signal. It hurts. Same, the brain cannot tell the difference. So that's profound, right? So most people think chronic pain is just physical. It's not. It's this whole thing. And why is that important? Because chronic pain changes the brain and the way we process stuff. And it's the result, like we're talking about, it's the result of a stress response that's been stuck in the on position, and it's way out of balance.
yeah.
And so this is what creates burnout. So one of the things that we notice a brain on chronic pain is I can't think straight. I forgot what I was doing, because it messes with the memory part of the brain. There's a lot of confusion because of the chemistry that comes in, and we already have a negative bias generally. Like we see something new in the environment, our first answer is no, right? To keep us safe, right? That's what we do, right? Then we come in and say, oh, maybe that's okay, right? But the first answer is no, naturally. So it's baked into the cake. Now, in chronic pain, that negative bias gets accentuated, and now it's all your fault. It's all my fault. And my self-esteem goes straight down. And now we've got collapse in the nervous system. We have this,
Yeah.
we're kind of alternating between hypervigilance and collapse, and hypervigilance and collapse. And we're not, there's no equanimity there at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of, yeah, I'm like, well, okay, so I wasn't diagnosed with chronic pain, but I probably have
You
lived.
had it. You had it. You had a system on chronic pain. That's what chronic pain is.
Right. Yeah.
They
Now
just didn't
I
call
think
it that.
everybody,
Yeah.
I guarantee you probably I think my whole thing is, especially like with my weight fluctuating, my legs always being swollen or bigger. It's like now, I'm getting more into like researching. I think I had lymphedema. Well, my legs are, that type of stuff. And I'm like, which like, do they hurt? I said, well, yeah, of course they do. But I've just lived with the pain for so long.
Yeah, I
That's
so
not
understand that.
normal. And I'm like, well, I know this, but nobody's listening to me. So it's like, finally,
Mhm.
I'm dealing with like a more naturopathic, holistic doctor. And she's like,
Yeah.
and that we've talked about this on the podcast before about Western medicine. And I'm like, well, yes, we need Western medicine, but it's not the end thing. More people need to go into, the body can heal itself. It really can. Yes, we still need surgeries. Yes, we still need Western medicine, but that's not the only thing that we need. It's like I was trying to get my parents to understand, same thing with my mom and my dad, that just because the doctor says it doesn't mean that that's true. And it's
Oh,
like
Lord.
going through you know,
It
gener-
may be true through their lens, through the
right,
lens they're looking through, but we always have to, I don't care what kind of healer I'm sitting in front of, I learned the hard way. Every healer is looking through a perspective.
right,
It's not the whole picture. They're
right.
only looking through there. So we always have to keep that in mind. I love that you said that because we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah,
And Western medicine is amazing at trauma, at
right.
physical trauma, amazing at it, but it's not good at chronic. It doesn't, it's not, it's like it's not,
Yeah.
that's not what it does. So we need the integrative, the functional doctor, the naturopaths, we need these other homeopaths, all these
All of them.
other
All of them
other
together.
options, which the pharmaceutical companies have come in and gone, you can't do that, so
Oh,
they've created a lot of insurance companies and stuff have created a lot of blocks around that.
oh yeah. You can't, they won't even
But
cover. Like it's like, oh, that's
I
not
know that's the issue is that you can't get coverage, but it doesn't mean that they're not valid. It just means that the system is, we're looking at a system that's designed um, it's designed in a way that I write about this from time to time. Um, Remember what I said about Dr. Prescott? He said, I don't need to look at your records. I want to know who you are.
right,
Okay. He was operating in a different paradigm.
right,
He remembered the heart. The system there is not other system, the Western medicine system. They've engineered the heart right out of it.
right. Yeah.
Like
It's
I can't tell you how many times, and I do blog about this from time to time. I can tell you how many times I've been in hospital because I've been a lot of times hospitals as a patient.
yeah,
And I go through surgery and I've had to learn how to walk 4 times. And that's a big deal. Learning how to walk all over again is that's a
yeah.
big thing, right? And so you need to bring a lot of courage to that, and there's a lot going on there. But the people that you meet in PT, you know, they're just trying to get your legs working. They're just trying
Right.
to, they're not thinking about your heart and your courage. And so I had to bring that to the table. I had to bring that. They weren't encouraging that. And I noticed the absence of that. And I and I blog about this from time to time because the problem is not just that the patients aren't getting served, but the people that are working as the healthcare providers are also not being served because they're not able to bring their heart to the game. And so none of us are in the game 100% and we're all getting injured by it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all being traumatized by it. I call it medical trauma.
Yeah. Because, and actually, with that you say, that's why I got out of the medical field because I started, you know, there's been things that happened, and I was kind of shifting out of going on a different path anyway. But I did high risk OB for, high risk pregnancies. So you can understand how that
Pressure.
there's just a lot,
Yeah.
there's
Mhm.
pressure to us to do more, to do more, to do more, but make sure you take care of your patients, do more, do more, do more. On top of all the other things that were going on in my life, I kind of like shut the door to that when I walked into work because I couldn't think about all of it at the same time, and people said this day, they're like, Lauren, I never knew you were going through it. I said, why would you? I'm here to work. I have to keep my job. And then I,
Mhm.
would be on Zoom, court calls during lunchtime, or I would have to take off and go sit in my car and do it or whatever. Like I took care of what I needed to take care of. And I noticed, I woke up one morning and I was like, I don't want to go to work. I hate what I do.
Mm.
And as soon as I said that, I was like, and this is why I need to leave because I got into healthcare to help people. I got into my job because I just have a special place and I'm, a healer. I just have a special place with helping people. And I think the time that I did do high risk OB ultrasound for 10 years that people requested me. People wanted to be, they wanted me to do their ultrasound. It's because I genuinely had a conversation with them about what they were going through or this is what I did or I understand your feelings or I just listened, and I'm doing an ultrasound. So it's not like it was like kind of like therapy at the same time.
Mhm.
And then when that stopped, I realized how many other nurses and how many other doctors had the same thing coming into the medical field, but they drain you. They tell you you have to do more patients with for less money. And it's just like,
Mhm.
enough is enough. Like, when
And
I
less
woke up that
time
morning,
per
yeah, I woke
patient.
up that morning and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't. Like I started
Yeah.
hating what I did. And then when you said that, I do believe that my heart was in it in the beginning. And
Uh-huh.
the healthcare just and the whole system is so broken
Yeah,
that
it's not set up for that.
no,
It just doesn't, it's, and
so sad because
it's
people
it's a
no,
very hard truth because what I saw, as I said, what I saw was it wasn't just the patients that were suffering. It was everybody in the system was suffering. Everyone was suffering and nobody was talking about it.
no.
You should see the comments I get when I blog about this. It's like, it's
It
amazing.
should be talked about more. It
Yeah.
should, because I know nurses and I'm sure doctors, what now it was a private practice. So we could have conversations like that and we could say the things that aren't working or we could tell our managers and they would go into the partner meetings and talk about stuff.
Mhm.
But there's a couple times that I've talked to my manager about it. Like, I just don't like how we're being treated.
Mhm.
If it wasn't for us ultrasound techs, they would have no practice. So, I don't know how you have to say that, but I feel like once I left there, I still am friends with some of the techs that are there, and they were like, Lauren, some of your words, the courage that you had to speak up and stuff. And then once I knew I was leaving, oh, I spoke about how I felt about the entire thing. She's like, some of that changed a lot. So it's like,
Mhm.
I did it. I feel like I do it everywhere I go. I did it at a hospital too. There was a lead tech there that would literally abuse the techs, like mentally, not like and emotionally, not physically, but um, I, went on maternity leave, never went to the other practice that I was in, and he got fired because of what I said. And I was like, well, you're welcome. I had to deal with them, but thank God you guys don't, because it's just injustice, and I hate that. And I'm like, I will speak
So,
up.
so you should call I'm going to make a suggestion that you call your podcast instead of Enlightened Misfits podcast, you call it Enlightened Disruptors podcast.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I just feel like I get.
Somebody's got to disrupt the system.
And I feel like I probably should talk more about stuff like that. And people even said to me, there's a couple episodes that I listened to, and you talk about basically the things that nobody talks about. And I was like, well, I try. I have to be careful. I don't want black vans at my door, people
Well,
following me.
that's true. Yeah, we got to.
I don't want the government after me. I don't no thank you.
Understood.
That.
Understood.
Yeah.
But I think that this is, this is still important that like I can walk into a hospital, you know, now, but I remember I had a friend who had a stroke and some years ago, and I've had surgery here where I live in this hospital. Um, also had a baby here. I had my son was here, and anyway, I've had some experiences in this hospital, but I also had all these other experiences in other hospitals that I hadn't really cleared the charge to. My friend has this stroke and I'm walking in and I don't remember no more drugs in the system, right? To like just like numb and veil all of it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm walking towards the hospital door and I'm feeling all this charge in my body and I'm going, what? This is you're here for service, Elizabeth. You're not here for you. But I had to recognize that, oh, that's your old stuff coming up you haven't cleared yet, right?
Yeah.
And so it took actual courage for me to walk through the door.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that was cool was I noticed all that stuff and I walked through anyway, and I gave myself a pat on the back for walking through anyway and having the courage to keep going. So I gave myself some self-compassion as I went through all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
I feel
sense.
like, yeah, I was gonna say, I think that courage is talked about one thing. There is a rock that my mom gave me. It's like one of the, she got it. I think I have it up there, but this rock that she doesn't talk much about how proud she is of me or whatever. But there's moments that she'll say, you're a really strong woman. You've gone through a lot, all this stuff. And she got me this rock, and she said when I walked into the store, they were on vacation. She said, I thought of you when I seen courage. She was like, because you show the world how to be like courageous, resilient, all that. And I was like, I think that was probably this sweetest thing that you've ever said to me in your entire life. And like to have that, because it reminds me that I need to show up with courage. If that's all I have right now, that is enough. Like I just have courage. Same thing with you. And walking through, even though you were there for service, it doesn't necessarily mean that your own shit's not going to get in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
Well, thank
whole
you for
point.
saying that, because I feel like somebody probably needed to hear that, because it's like we try not to make it about ourselves, right? But at the same time, our things get in the way.
We're
And then
still human.
reminder, yeah,
Yeah.
just a reminder that, we've all been through something, and just understanding.
Well, and the energy of a hospital is a whole,
Oh,
there's a lot going on there
yeah,
and we're clean and sober. And so we're feeling the field and we're noticing, the hackles go up. And not so much as defensiveness, but it's like, oh, what's happening here? And
yeah,
it's really important for me. It's really important to just breathe deeply and even in a hospital, with a mask on if needed.
yeah,
But I'm just, giving your nervous system the care that it needs to be
yeah.
able to handle, because the environment is kind of a war zone in there,
Oh, yeah. I
right? I
remember
mean, I
even when
mean, even to the not non, even if I wasn't a patient and you weren't a nurse, we would still walk in there for a friend. We would still feel it.
yeah, 100%.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Energetically, we'd feel it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I had to go visit, I don't like to visit people in the hospital, but when I had to go visit a family member in the hospital, um, I was like, oh wow, I need to go get like a shower or something. Like I just
Yeah.
felt like my whole
Yeah.
soul. Did my soul leave my body? Because I feel like I'm missing something. But it was because
Yeah.
I forgot to protect myself walking in there, to not have things attached to me or whatever. You know what I mean? And just the whole situation that I had to go visit my family member of, being in the hospital. So, before we wrap up, I want you to talk a little bit about your near death experience. Like,
Mm.
if you don't want to talk about what happened, or,
Oh, no. I
talk
had three of them, and they
about,
were all very similar.
okay.
Um, A, unexpected. And then the other thing was, I I just appeared in front of this being who I couldn't see their face, but there was kind of a body, and there were a whole bunch of other bodies behind them. I couldn't see faces, but I didn't recognize the big being in the front, but I knew everybody behind. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew exactly who they were. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was each time this happened, I don't remember the beings doing anything except maybe saying hello to me or greeting me somehow. And then my comment back was, I didn't complete my mission. I have to go back.
Oh,
And I came back. Now, here's the thing that was interesting. The love that I experienced on that side, I can't even, I just can't even, and I write poetry and I have no way of describing that. I just don't.
yeah.
So it was very interesting to me as like being observing myself, right? Having that experience of being in all of that
Yeah.
and choosing to come back here where that field of love is quite constricted,
Yeah.
right? And that's it in a nutshell for me. And I will say that I don't have I'm sure that this body has fear of death because that's just part of the organism. That's part of that's just part of our DNA.
Right.
But my spirit, the rest of me, I don't have a fear of death.
Yeah, me either.
I'm more concerned about completing my mission.
Yeah. Yeah. I had another podcast guest on about near death experience and the way that she described it, which is probably nothing that I don't think anybody talks about either. And, I said, all of us have this fear of death. I never have. I don't even think my body has because that wasn't my fear. I would be my fear would be like, of being seen or if I talk too loud or something like that. But it's like, I've actually had three near death experiences, all self inflicted. Not that that matters, but um, and every time that happened, it was like you're not ready yet. And I'm thinking, and I every time, and they just like kept like my life would just keep going on. Like it was like it would happen, and then I'm like, okay, well, what am I gonna cook for dinner? Like it was just so
Interesting.
it just like I mean, obviously there was a lot of healing in between that of why that happens, but like in a nutshell, it's like I know that is just you're not on the 3D plane anymore. You're somewhere else or whatever. And
Yeah, it's not like life stops. You're
yeah,
just a new dimension.
yeah,
So I don't, I mean, I just, so so as I said, I had a science background, but my background really is in biology and I have a plant science degree.
okay.
And in case you didn't notice, I'm a little bit of a plant freak.
I love that.
And, and so one of the things that I did was I got into animal behavior and I got into evolution and I got into evolutionary behavior and I get into just kind of like what's happening here. And I learned, we're just we're a spirit that's living in a lot of recycled, you know, we just keep recycling
Right.
the the
Yeah.
the atoms on Earth, but we're the spirit, and that spirit moves on, but the atoms stay here. Anyway, so that air that you and I just breathed, how many different forms do you think that oxygen was in before it got to us? And how many will it go into before it, after us, right?
Yeah.
And so trees and water and dinosaurs and all of it, mud flats and caterpillars and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we're really quite timeless, but we're always changing. We're always changing. So that was a very helpful perspective for me in terms of kind of understanding the nature of death.
Right.
Death
Yeah.
is, in many ways, death is a construct of the mind.
Right. Yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah.
We just move from one state to another, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, that's literally when, like, I thought to myself, okay, so if I probably die a lot of times throughout the day, right? Like I feel like I have go through this whole cycle of I wake up, then I feel like I have this ego death or whatever happened. It's like this whole thing, and then it repeats every single day. And I thought to myself, well, when I walk through a doorway, I sometimes forget why I was in there. And then I'm like, what am I in here for? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's kind of like what you literally just explained. It's just everything is getting recycled. There's no like sense of time anywhere else, just here. So it's like, oh, this actually makes sense. So it actually was a lot. The reason why I'm saying this, and the reason why I feel like I ask a lot of people if they have near death experiences, that their perspective on death or why it happened is much different than from like this what am I trying to say, probably from this ego victim mentality,
Mhm.
I know I had to go through all of that stage and process and all of that. Like I did it because of this. Like I used to always tell myself, well, I thought it would be easier. It's not easier. Like it doesn't make any
It's
sense.
just different.
It's just different,
It's
right?
just different. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like, people, and I think there's a couple people that said to me, you're the first person I ever told that this happened. And I was like, okay, I feel like a lot of people tell me that for whatever reason. And I said, well, you're wounded. They're like, what made me do it? I said, well, your wounded self did probably, at least that was my experience. And then they're like, this light bulb, they're like, oh my goodness, that's true. And then they can look at it from a different, because it happened. I don't really know what happened in the meantime. And then it was like back here. But then throughout the time of me kind of meditating and being asked to show me what happened, I could see the transition of seeing, being out of my body, seeing my body, having to go back there. And then it's like, I'm not ready yet. And I never really knew what that meant until the third time. And I was like, oh, I could see my mission here and why I signed up here, So that was what I was focused on. And then those thoughts went away. It was.
The funny thing is, I'm so glad you shared that. The funny thing is I'm hearing you speak. I'm thinking to myself at the time that it happened, and I'm standing in front of this being and I'm saying, I haven't completed my mission. I came back to Earth. I didn't know what my mission was, but I knew I had one.
Yeah.
So that's the paradox that we live in when we when we enter this human body. It's this paradoxical living, this human experience, spirit having a human experience. Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
We, where we have this dualistic um, reality here: good, bad, left, right, up, down. But that's not the truth.
Right.
Right, that's this, we're actually multi-dimensional beings, but we're stuck in this human anyway, with the mind and the ego and its
Yeah.
limitation. Beautiful thing to keep us safe, and it has these limitations that we get challenged with.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So before we wrap up, thank you so much for all of your wisdom. I really did have I'm hoping that everybody had such a good time listening as I did. But could you just share, maybe if somebody is just starting their healing journey, or maybe they just feel stuck or hopeless, what is like one small but powerful shift that they can make today?
Oh, well, the thing I learned the hard way was doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body knows how to heal. So the greatest healer in your life lives within you. So we're looking to anybody out there in the healthcare field to help us. They're guides. They're not gods. They're guides, right? They're helping us setting these are the best conditions, these are the things we suggest that you do. And then what we have to listen to the wisdom and hear. That's where the healing power is. And we forget that. And I was outwardly focused for a long part of my healing journey. And it took a lot of pressure for me. It took a lot of pressure and pain and suffering for me to get that. So I would like everybody to get it now and not have to go through all that.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, your body always knows it has the answers, right? Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode with Elizabeth on the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and then share this episode with somebody that you feel that would gain knowledge from listening. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.